Hey, this is Jack Russell from Jack Russell's Great White, and you're listening to Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 390 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week is a really fun one because Jack Russell is here. This is someone I've wanted to have on the podcast since this podcast started nearly 9 years ago. Glad to finally make it happen. Of course, you all know Jack Russell from Great White, and he has a brand new album that just came out with Tracy Guns, aptly titled Russell Guns. Great stuff. Jack's going to talk a lot about that here in just a bit when we jump in this interview. And of course, we're going to talk about some Jack Russell's Great White stuff, some Great White from the 90s, Jani Lane, all kinds of great stuff. So we're going to jump into that very shortly. But first, I need to let you know who we're sponsored by, and that would be DEB Concerts, concert promoter based right here in the Tulsa area. They've been bringing great acts to this area for the last several years. Coming up here shortly, April 6th, it's a Saturday night. Lita Ford and Last in Line will be co-headlining a show at the Cox Business Center. You don't want to miss this one. Both great live bands. Last in Line has been on fire the last 5-6 years with some great albums. Great live band. Lita Ford is, of course, great live as well. You don't want to miss this one. Hit up debconcerts.com for more info. Follow them on all the socials. DEB Concerts on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. They also book the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year. This year will be no different. Submissions have been open for that stage now for a few weeks. So you might be too late, but if you've got a band, jump on DEB Concerts Facebook page. Find out how you could submit if you're a regional band, unsigned. That stage has a lot of unsigned acts, but they also have a lot of great acts headlining. You know, they've had throughout the last few years Ace Frehley, Buck Cherry, John Five, Warrant, Slaughter. I'm trying to remember who else, headlined that stage, but every year great stuff. So looking forward to seeing what that lineup holds for us this year in 2024 as well. And again, as always, thank you to DEB Concerts. We've also got Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed. And most importantly, they are mother approved. Nearly 30 years of experience from Jake Thompson and his crew over there at Sunset Tattoo. Tons of great work that you can check out in photos on their socials. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. They specialize in all different kinds of styles. I'm not just talking out my ass. I've had work done by Jake that I'm happy with. And very, very shortly, I'll be able to talk about what other work I've had done as I'm getting ready to go in and see him actually after I finish recording this. But yeah, Jake Thompson, Sunset Tattoo, great stuff. Hit him up, call ahead to set up an appointment time to go in and talk about what work you're looking to have done. Or just walk in. They accept walk-ins as well. So hit up Sunset Tattoo. Tell them you heard about him on Thunder Underground. All right. Before we jump into this talk with Jack Russell, I need to talk about something else, and that would be a recent concert in Oklahoma City this past weekend from Mr. Big. This band has been in the top 5 of my concert bucket list for my entire life. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of shows throughout the years, seen the majority of everybody I've ever hoped to see, but for some reason, Mr. Big has always escaped me. Of course, there's a lot of time throughout that time period where they weren't together, where they weren't doing many live shows, and when they did in America, it just didn't work out for me personally. But I'm glad to say that this finally happened. That bucket list is now getting very shorter after this year and last year I got to see Glenn Hughes. So, Danko Jones and Evergrey and Lenny Kravitz, you're on deck. But back to the point at hand. Mr. Big in Oklahoma City at the Diamond Ballroom this past Saturday night. It was actually the final show of this leg of the tour. They are on their farewell tour. I know a lot of people are pretty jaded by that word and put it in quotation marks. I mean, anybody can come back at any time, but Mr. Big is one of those bands that, for some reason, I just take their word on it. They seem like if they're saying it's a farewell tour, that it probably is going to be. Of course, It's 3 of the 4 original members, and the 4th member being Pat Torpey, who passed away a few years ago. And, ever since then, they've released new music, but they've also celebrated him in the live setting. They mentioned him, I believe, every show, as they should. So this is kind of as well as a farewell, a tribute, to him and to that original band. And also on this tour, they are playing Lean Into It, their second album, in its entirety. Of course, it is, their biggest album with their most success because it had the mega hit single To Be With You on it. It also had, a couple other tracks that were notable singles. If you remember back then, Just Take My Heart, another big ballad. Green Tinted 60s Mind and Alive and Kickin' both got airplay as well, I know. But such an amazing band that is so underrated in the grand scheme of things, because your casual fan knows this band for what I just said, To Be With You. Maybe Just Take My Heart or Wild World. They don't delve too much deeper than that. I'm saying, if it's a casual listener of rock music. But this band, is comprised of 4 guys that are at the top of their game. And when you look at the guitar slot and the bass slot, we're talking at the height. I mean, we could sit here and list like hundreds of guitarists throughout the years that are phenomenal. But you can't make a complete list without saying the name Paul Gilbert. And you sure as shit can't make a list of the greatest rock and roll bass players without including Billy Sheehan, who, in my opinion, is number 1. That's where I put him. But granted, we know that this guy's a top 5, top 10 all-timer. These guys are phenomenal. They've been doing it longer than many of us have been alive. I mean, they're all late 60s, I believe. I'm not sure. Eric Martin's probably a little younger than the other guys. And I know Billy Sheehan's a little bit older, but he's around 70, I believe. And these guys are still on stage, energetic, putting in the work, putting out such a great set of music. A nice long, nearly 2-hour set. They opened the show with 3 tracks, Addicted to That Rush, such a killer live opener, from their debut album, which is oddly the only song they played from the self-titled debut album. Pretty much everything they played, they comprised to the first 4 albums. Late 80s to mid 90s time period, which is, the majority of what the fans know. But, I kind of hoped there would be a couple of the songs from the last couple albums thrown in, but I'm not going to complain about that in the least. But they kicked the show off with 3 tracks from 3 separate albums, being Addicted to That Rush, and then they did Take Cover, which is from the Hey Man album, and then Price You Gotta Pay from Bump Ahead, the 3rd album. And then they jumped right into Lean Into It in its entirety. They played the 11 tracks off of that. It was so cool to be able to hear songs. They even mentioned a couple of songs. I think it was My Kind of Woman. He said that they had never played live before they started playing this album in its entirety. But this album is such a solid, great album from that time period. So many great rock songs that really focus, like I said, on the level of masterful playing that these musicians did, back then, and can still pull off live. But the songs I mentioned earlier, of course, the lead-off track, Daddy, Brother, Lover, Little Boy, features the electric drills, which, came out. Actually, it came out, I believe, the same year. Did that come out the same year as Eddie Van Halen, Pound Cake? And I remember who did this first, but I know that Mr. Big was doing it live, I believe, before Eddie Van Halen. I could be wrong, but not really even relevant to what we're talking about. But the rest of the album, Voodoo Kiss, has always been one of my favorite tracks of theirs. Getting to hear that, like I mentioned earlier, My Kind of Woman, Road to Ruin, such a fantastic song. And, and it works out for them in the placement as well, the fact that To Be With You on an 11-track album was the 11th track on this album. It was the final track on the album, which is not very common either. Not just from this genre, but from any genre. You've got a big ballad, this song that kind of catapulted the band. Usually, it's on a track listing, early to mid on the album. But so when you do an album in its entirety, sometimes a band's playing like a mega hit early on. But Mr. Big, it works out, in this space, I believe, of a set list that it got to be, far later into the set. And then after they completed the album, they jumped into Wild World. They had a hit with that from the Bump Ahead album, cover of the Cat Stevens classic. They also played Colorado Bulldog from the Bump Ahead album, which is a fantastic, fucking song. Just so cool to hear that. And in between that, they did a full guitar solo from Paul Gilbert and a full bass solo from Billy Sheehan. And both of these were good, I would say 5 to 7 minutes at least. Sometimes even a 5-minute guitar solo can get a little repetitive to some people in a setting like that. But, you've got, like I said, two guys that are at the top of their game that I can't imagine that if you were in that room listening, watching, that you weren't in awe. And at any time you get a chance to see either of these guys live doing that, I could sit there and watch either of those guys just play their instrument with no other music accompanying them for an hour and a half and feel like it was too short. So getting to see that was phenomenal, and they kicked right into Shy Boy after the bass solo. Of course, the Tala song, from Billy Sheehan's first, notable act before everybody knew who, or when everybody was getting to know who he was back in the 80s. And then they finished the show with a few covers. They did 30 Days in a Hole. They did Good Lovin', which they all four switched instruments, which is another testament to these guys. And it wasn't just like guitar and bass switch, which work hand in hand a lot. You had Eric Martin playing bass. The guy's also an accomplished guitar player who doesn't play much guitar live during a big, a Mr. Big show, but, he does tons of solo shows with the Eric Martin Band. Does that as well. And he, jumped on bass. Billy Sheehan just handled the vocals. I know I should have looked this up. I'm drawing a blank on the new drummer's name, but he's phenomenal as well, and he handled guitar work, and then Paul jumped on the drums, and they kicked out Good Lovin', the classic song that everybody knows, and then they finished with Baba O'Riley by The Who, one of the greatest rock songs ever by one of the greatest rock bands ever. Baba O'Riley, of course, features some keyboard, piano, and Billy Sheehan handled that, of course, on the bass, those melody lines, and it phenomenally works because we're talking about Billy F. and Sheehan, right? So, with all that said, I could ramble on and on about how much I love those guys, love what they could do. I actually had the opportunity to see Billy Sheehan a few times live with the Winery Dogs, 4 times, I believe, but I'd never seen Paul Gilbert, Eric Martin, and of course Mr. Big. So I'm so happy to be able to finally get that opportunity. I should have mentioned beforehand, instead of doing this backwards, but the band Eyebolt opened up. They're a band from the Tulsa area who kind of just burst onto the scene maybe about a year ago. They're managed by an old friend of the podcast here, Tom Green. I'd been hoping to see him for a while and hadn't got the chance, and finally got to with this opening slot. They are very much, over the past, 5 to 10 years, there's been, a slight resurgence in newer bands, playing a retro sound, whether it be the vein of the 70s with your Greta Van Fleet or Rival Sons or Dirty Honey, and then you've got bands emulating the 80s style, with, like, say, a Wild Street or Dirty Penny. I don't know if they're still around. Midnight City. There's a lot of bands. Crazy Licks, Crash Diet, both those bands have been around quite a while, but, incorporating a style of this period of the 80s that we all know and love, and they do it. They dress the part, they look the part. If you just walk in the room, you would feel like you're transported back to 1986. And the fact I really loved about Eyebolt is a lot of these bands that emulate that style kind of go toward the more poppier side of that, which would be like your Poison, Def Leppard-ish kind of area. But Eyebolt really leans to the heavier side of that with like your Wasp, Doc, and Rat, that kind of, early Motley Crue. So I really dig what they've done, making this sound. Really looking forward to seeing what's coming. I got the chance to talk to Tom out there, and he said that they're going to be recording a couple tracks at the Church Studio in Tulsa soon, so really looking forward to hearing these guys on record as well. And of course, it's just another band that I need to get on this podcast as well. So there, I put that out in the universe, so hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But again, if you're anywhere in the area that Mr. Big is playing, they're doing European shows, they're doing more U.S. shows here in a couple months, and then of course shows throughout the year. So get out there and check these guys out while you still have the chance. All right, let's talk to Jack Russell. Well, before we talk to him, let's talk about him for a second. Of course, you know Great White. You know Jack Russell's Great White. But you might not know about Russell Guns. It's a brand new album that came out in January. Of course, features Tracy Guns on guitar, Jack Russell on vocals. Great album. I mean, it fits into the vein of what you would expect from these guys as far as both of them being blues-minded rock musicians. But it also feels different than anything you've ever got from LA Guns or Great White and Jack Russell. So to hear those guys together was great for me because I'm huge fans of both of them throughout their careers. You know, and of course, Jack's going to talk about this album, talk about working with Tracy, and talk about working with Serafino from Frontiers. If you've listened to this podcast at any length over the last 2 or 3 years, you've heard that name pop up quite a bit because we've had on several artists that have worked with Frontier Records, and Serafino, who has been involved in production or co-writing or whatever with the album. This guy's kind of a phenom when it comes to songwriting. There's not many people on his level in recent years, in my opinion. So you'll hear that on this album. You can hear it on tons of other albums. If you look up this guy's credits, you'd probably be amazed at the people he's worked for and with. But back to Jack Russell, you need to really check out this album. It's a very cool, slight departure from what you know with Jack Russell. And if you've, one of those people that just know classic stuff and, have hung on to that, there's some newer stuff out there from Jack Russell you really need to take a look at. Like He Saw It Coming is the album from Jack Russell's Great White that came out in 2017. Very cool, right in the vein of everything you've ever known and loved from Great White, what Jack Russell did with the band. And then something else we talk about here coming up, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. The band, Jack Russell's Great White, has released an acoustic album full of covers of old Great White songs, and then they've released Great Zeppelin 2, a studio album full of Zeppelin songs, as opposed to what Great White did back in the 90s with the first Great Zeppelin. There's been tons of covers of Zeppelin throughout the years, but Jack Russell, is at the top of that list when it comes to covering Robert Plant, in my opinion. He's always had that aura, that sound where he sounds like himself, but he also pulls very much from that era. And to hear, him cover Zeppelin songs has always been phenomenal. So check out Great Zeppelin 2 that just came out a few years ago if you have not. I would ramble a little bit about some Great White that, I've always loved and always try to talk to people about, which is the album Psycho City from like 92, I believe, and then 94 was Sail Away. But I bring both these up to Jack here in just a bit, and he talks about them, so no need to ramble on that. But something else I wanted to note is that Terry I. Lou, who, of course, was the singer in Great White after Jack Russell left for quite a while. He's not in the band Great White any longer, but something interesting of note, I didn't really bring it up here to Jack, but I had an interview with Terry I. Lou on the podcast about a year ago. And he talked a lot about, how much, he loved Jack as a vocalist, songwriter, musician, in his time in the band. But he also talked about something that the two of them did together the year before last, where they did a lot of acoustic shows, the two of them together, which, is entirely unique, in the grand scheme of rock and roll, because you don't hear like, oh, here's the original singer from a band. Here's a guy that replaced him. They're both no longer in the band, but they're going to get together and, put on some shows. I just thought it was unique and amazingly cool. Wish I had got the chance to see something like that. Maybe they'll do more in the future. But either way, check that one out. We had Mark Hindle from Great White on the podcast a couple times years ago, and World of Great White that you can check out. But in the meantime, what we're going to check out is Jack Russell. So I'm going to quit talking about it, and we're going to jump into it. Here's Jack Russell speaking on Russell guns, and of course, a lot of other great white stuff.
So far, it's been really well. I'm actually, I was quite surprised because it's definitely, it's a little different. It's not something that we attempted to do before, musically or lyrically. It's a whole different stratagem too. I mean, we didn't. The idea was approached to me. The songs are already, they're written, they're done. We just want you to learn them and play them. So I said, okay, well, I can do that, depending on how the songs are. I wouldn't just going to play anything, but I mean, they were good enough. I was happy enough with them. I said, okay, yeah, we'll lay these down and see what comes out. And for the most part, I was pretty well happy with it. I wasn't, there was no Medusas on there where I was like, yeah, it's a decent record. It's a decent record. We're supposed to do another one. And I'd be up for it.
Was it written by Alessandro?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really? Okay. Because I know he writes a lot of the Frontier stuff. Do you know, did he write it with you and Tracy in mind, or was it something he'd written and then searched out who he thought would work for it? Or
that I don't know that much about, honestly. I think he had it in mind because he came to us with the stuff. I mean, he came to me and said, "Here, what do you think of these songs? I'd like you to do them." So that's the only thing I can ascertain.
Okay.
But, yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. I had never done anything like that. Well, except for a young kid learning cover songs. But I had never. Well, yeah, I guess it's exactly like that. Exactly like learning cover songs and recording. So
yeah,
it's same old, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's like learning a cover song that
comes from, huh?
It's like learning a cover song that then becomes your song, right?
Right. Once bitten, twice shy. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That kind of song. Yeah. I mean, it never mattered to me where a song came from. A good song is a good song, and so the story goes. It never bothered me who wrote it, when it was written, what it was about. Well, that song was really about a chick. It doesn't matter.
So lyrically, it doesn't matter to you. Like if say something you wrote the lyrics, they mean more to you than what someone else wrote. You sing them the same way.
No. Good point. Good point. No, they definitely. If it's a song that I wrote and I have put my heart and soul into it, and it's going to mean more to me than somebody else's song. Because if I have somebody in my mind's eye while I'm writing it, and there's not just a fictional person, but a real person, then it's going to be a little more special,
Right.
But I think as songwriters, we could take an imaginary person and make them as real as we want anyway.
Right. The press release for this, you mentioned that you'd had reservations about making the album. Was it because of what we just talked about with the songs being presented to you already written and everything?
Yeah, I was kind of like, how am I going to, how is that going to go? What if I don't really, it don't really appeal to me, But I said, well, Jack, you're an artist. You can sing about anything you have, So I thought, well, it would just be another challenge if it was against my moral code or whatever else. What if I was singing against something I didn't believe in at all?
Right.
That may have come up. Who knows? So I said, what was I going to do then? I said, well, I just be an artist and do it. So.
Yeah, kind of shocked me when I know that the album title is Medusa, but it shocked me when I saw the album cover with you being a part of the act. It didn't seem like Jack Russell at all,
Right.
A little more intense than what you expect from a Jack Russell project,
Yeah, exactly.
But musically, it fits very well into what you've, done throughout your career.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
Did you guys record this all remotely from each other, or did any of you guys get in the studio together?
No, I did my stuff in Denver, recorded it to LA, and Tracy, I think, did his from LA to Italy, and
Okay.
then powers that be made squished all together. I don't know how they do that, but they just, you know.
I mean, a lot's changed throughout the years. Back in the day, it would be everybody in the studio together, and now you can do that easily, across the world. Don't have to be in the same area. Do you have a preference on working that way, or does it matter to you as long as you're making the music?
I would, honestly, I would still rather be in the same room with the band, playing out of one studio, everybody there at the time, and laying it down together. But it really obviously doesn't make a difference. I mean, maybe you just didn't feel in your head, in your spirit, but for me, sonically or feel wise, it didn't impair anything. I didn't think. I thought, okay, it sounds just like I did the record here, or we did it there. You couldn't go, oh, it sounds like Jack's singing in Denver, and then we're recording in LA.
Right.
Yeah, I can take that. I can tell that Rocky Mountain Highness.
Yeah. Yeah, a little less air in your voice, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can't breathe up here.
Well, Tracy Guns to me has always been a pretty underrated guitarist in the grand scheme of when people talk about guitarists. Like, talk about your thoughts and what he brought to this album.
Well, Tracy has his own style. He's got his own thing. He's he's like a poor man's Page.
Yeah.
He's a great player. I love Tracy. I think he's just spectacular. And to have something on recording with him now is really it makes me feel good. It's nice to have that for my collection.
Yeah.
Because I've always admired his playing. I just admired him as a person.
Yeah, it's a great point mentioning Page because I always thought he had that kind of Zeppelin style to him. And, obviously as soon as I heard about this project, that works great with you, obviously, for what you've done throughout your career.
Right? Yeah. This was a different beast, though. This is a different beast. This wasn't. It didn't come out the way I thought it would. I mean, it in a good way. Good way. I didn't really know what to expect, but I liked it more than I thought I was gonna.
I kind of didn't really have a preconceived notion of what to expect, but the album, I absolutely love it. I love his solo on Medusa. I love, your vocals on this entire thing. It's a great album.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Shifting a tiny bit, a few years ago, you released the Once Bitten Acoustic Bites with Jack Russell's Great White. And I know you've done a lot of acoustic stuff throughout your career, but was it tough to rearrange some of the songs that, are a little bit heavier, like Lady Red Light or All Over Now or something like that?
It just kind of flowed, really. I didn't really have a. I was wondering about like On the Edge. That was the one I was kind of I was scratching my head about. How's that going to work, And
Yeah.
it came out cool as ever, I was really, really surprised. It was like those songs were almost formatted to be that way.
Yeah.
They came in real good. I was happily happily surprised.
When you guys were, putting those acoustic songs together, were you like, was the band in its entirety kind of involved in, arranging them, or did like you and Robbie sit down, or how'd you guys do that?
Um, Me and Robbie sat down with them and put them together, and it was really basically just we didn't really do too much different. We just kind of did the songs like we did them.
Yeah.
Just try to make them a little more interesting and try to take it from a acoustic journey. It was fun. I was that album really. I'm still scratching my head on that one, how that all worked out, because I was like, oh, is this going to work even?
Yeah.
Because I had no idea. It was taking these songs and going, okay, well, it sounds like doable. Save Your Love, certainly.
Right.
And then, yeah, and songs like Living on the Edge and um, what's that song? Never Change Heart and things like that. And Lady Red Light. it was just we weren't sure how it was going to pan out, but I'm happy then and pleased that it did. So it turned out so well. I was going to do the same thing to the Twice Shy album at some point. We just haven't gotten around to it.
I like the full album.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Looking forward to that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I like to do that. I like to get some more acoustic stuff in our catalog,
Yeah. Something else you guys recently did was the, Great Zeppelin 2. Talk about the idea to do a few, you did a few of the same songs that you guys, did with Great White back in the 90s.
Right, in
Like
the live
No
show.
Quarter and Stairway in the Rover. Like, what was the idea of redoing a few of the same ones?
Just felt like it.
Yeah.
I just like those songs especially a lot, So I wanted to hear them in a full blown studio, not just a live situation.
Yeah, good point.
I just got to do it because I could do it.
Yeah.
I felt like it, so I did it. Not much more to it than that.
Yeah.
You can be selfish when you record. I found out.
Well, you got to have a great band, obviously, to pull off a full album of Zeppelin songs, and especially on something like Moby Dick, like just letting those guys go. I mean, that's some great stuff.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive players, man. I mean, they really are. They're a lot of fun to play with and hang out with, and they're always teaching me something new.
Yeah,
and that's pretty hard to do.
After all this time, yeah.
Old dog and all,
Well, I know, you've stated before that Dan McNay is the best bass player you've ever played with. Like, what is it that he brings to the table that sets him apart for you?
He's just got a lot of soul, man. He's just dead on, smooth, just dead on soul junkie, He really is. I mean, the guy he's just got it oozing out of him. It was my perfect bass player,
Yeah.
Just groovy and just, sleazy. I love the way he plays. I love the way he plays.
Yeah.
Very fortunate to have him in the cast of characters.
You mentioned the, possibility of doing Twice Shy acoustic, and you're on the 30-year anniversary now of Sail Away. Are there any thoughts on, incorporating some of that stuff into your live show or anything?
We just been putting some of Sail Away in the live show.
Okay.
Yeah, answer to that question would be yes.
Easy, yeah.
But I had no idea it was the 30th anniversary of Sail Away. You're kidding?
That's wild, isn't it?
God, man, that is amazing.
See, now I'm feeling old. That came out when I was in high school.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Thanks for filling me in on that one. I really want to go back to bed.
Right. Another album from that era was Psycho City, and that's pretty underrated in your catalog, in my opinion. Like, two of my favorite tracks of yours are Big Goodbye and Love Is a Lie. Like, what are your memories of recording that album?
God, I have so many. We rented a big 17-acre ranch up in San Ynez, California, about a mile down from Neverland, Michael Jackson's Neverland. And we pulled a mobile truck up to the house, and all the crew, the band, and we just took over the house and had a catering situation come up, and they fed us all this healthy food. Can't believe we made an hour on it, but it was great. I mean, it was a really great atmosphere to be in. We put amps in closets, and playing in guitars and in the kitchen, and it's just anywhere you could put an instrument and a guitar that was going to block it out. We made it into a big studio, and we pulled the mobile truck up to it, and then we recorded in the house, and it was a great vibe. It was a really great vibe because we were like out in the middle of nowhere, and we were just playing out. We were just like playing out on the Spawn Ranch.
Yeah.
It was kind of creepy in a way, but it was really a neat way to make a record. I've always wanted to do something like that, so I got that one out of my brain.
Yeah. I guess that location kind of added, to the fact that the album, had a slightly darker feel than the albums before that, I feel like.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the album was, Psycho City, man. It was just about all the craziness was happening at that time, and you know, the riots were coming up, and everything was going down. This place was going nuts.
Yeah.
So it was appropriate record for the time. Um, I think it's one of our best albums. I really do. I think it was well underrated. So many songs in there I just adore. What's You said love is a lie. I'm gonna go on and further. Get on home, great song. Old Rose Motel,
Yeah.
Come with the Wind, which we play now live now. It's just great songs. It's just a lot of fun. It was a different album, a different flavor. It was, like you said, it was definitely a darker record. Than the happy Once Bitten record was.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that, Love is a Lie was released as a single back then, and it wasn't, if I remember right, it wasn't, cut down for radio, I think. It could have been, and I'm just forgetting, but
I don't think we did.
yeah, I mean, I love
Yeah, I
that
don't
fact
think we
because that was
did.
kind of unusual around that time, outside of maybe November Rain or something, to have a song like a song that was like 8 minutes long, on the radio.
Right. Well, you funny, oddly enough, we did that with Rock Me. We
Oh,
we uh we did it. We did a edited. We wrote an edited version for the video, but for the single, we just put the time on the record the wrong time. We put 3 minutes and 58 seconds, and then on the other side of the album, every song was 3 minutes and 57 seconds. So Rock Me, and they go, oh, 3 minutes and 58 seconds. I got time to go to the bathroom. They come back and like it's still playing. God, this song is longer than I thought. And
yeah,
then they figured it out soon enough. But by that point, the song was already in rotation,
yeah,
But it was pretty good. Pretty good. We fooled them pretty good.
yeah. That's great. I saw your recent birthday post about Jenny Lane, and I actually saw you guys when you played in Rocklahoma 2008, and Jenny Lane came up and sang with you. Do you remember that performance at all?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm racking my brain. I can't remember what song you sang with you, but I just remember, being blown away at the time.
Yeah, Cheney's a great guy,
Yeah.
man. He really, really, really was. I miss him a lot, I miss him a lot.
When he filled in for you in Great White in 2010, did you ever watch any clips or anything or videos of that?
Yeah, I saw some of it. And it was really good. He did just what I wanted him to do, which is great. Make it his own, Um, the only comment he told me, he goes, "Why do you have to sing so high all the time?"
Yeah. Any specific songs that you like the way he sing? Because yeah, I thought the same thing when I looked at, videos. I'm like, I like the fact that he's like not trying to imitate you.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything he did, I thought was spot on. He did it on his own. He did his own thing to it.
Yeah.
But without taking away from it, without trying to like force it into something it wasn't. You know, Parts that had to be there, he left them alone. But when he could change something without ruining the taste of the song, he did that. He was very cleverly done.
Absolutely. Well, bringing it back around to, current times, Jack Russell's Great White, you guys are playing Vegas this weekend and you've got dates throughout the spring. Like, what else can we expect from you guys throughout the rest of the year?
Just more shows all over the states, and on to this universe and beyond.
Yeah.
We're just playing everywhere we can, man. I mean, I've only got who knows how many years left. Hopefully 20.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. That's pretty hopeful. But
Do you have that kind of desire to just run it until you can't
yeah,
physically
I
or
want to play
vocally
until I
anymore?
can't play no. I want to play until I can't play no more. I
Yeah.
mean, it's fun. I hope there's a day though where I can just go. You know what? I've had a really great long career. I'm happy with what I've done. I'm proud of my successes and even some of my failures. I just want to call this one a day and put a fork in it and head off for the sunset.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of hope pans out. You know, I want it to be on my terms.
Well, after doing this for, 40 years now, do you still get nerves when you go on stage?
Uh, yeah, but nerves aren't really the right word for it. I mean, yeah, I guess you could. I would just say it's more anxiety, a little anxiety, just because I'm a perfectionist, and if I hit a bad note, it's like, oh my god, that one note, oh, she was perfect except for that one note. Oh my god, I'll just beat myself up about it. So my wife's been telling me that since I've known her. You got to quit doing that. I go, I try, but I can't.
Yeah.
It's just too hard.
We're all our
Uh,
own worst critic, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, we are.
Do you
What?
have a,
I said, oh, he's a tough critic.
Yeah.
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 Do you have
Well,
a
you gotta be.
regimen
You
for,
gotta be keep your standards up. You gotta be. You gotta be tough on yourself. Because if you're not tough hard on yourself, you're gonna have a crap product.
right,
You know, if anything goes, and who cares? And if anybody can sing, then why would anybody sing?
right,
It's like, oh, I don't do that very well, but I'm one of the millions of people that can do it.
right.
So I can see why you want to listen to me.
What do you do when you're not on tour to keep your voice in shape?
Drink a lot of whiskey, scream, smoke cigarettes. No,
Yeah.
I don't drink. I don't smoke. I take care of my voice. Um, take my medicines like my doctor tells me. I keep in shape. I don't do anything that's going to harm. What's left of this golden voice here I've had for so long. I've
Yeah.
been doing this since I was. Let's see, when did I start singing professionally? I was 11 years old when I started what turned into this band. And yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah, that's a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm 63 now. So 63 and,
So 52? Yeah. 52 years?
well, that's amazing, huh?
Yeah. Was there been any talks on a next studio album for Jack Russell's Great White?
Yeah, right now we're actually about halfway through writing it. We've got the foundations down on like 6 songs. Um, 5 songs we've got them mostly. 5 songs they're mostly done, and one song is, like I said, the foundation's done. And then we've got, I'm looking for a total of 12, 11, 12. So we're just going to keep writing until those are finished, and we'll see if they're worthy. I'm being pleasantly surprised as we go, because I was really thinking it was going to be a hard time, outdoing He Saw It Coming. That album to me was a really good record. It was a solid album.
Yeah.
And besting that one for me was going to be a tough one. And I'm still going to be a tough one. But we've got some good contenders. So it doesn't have to necessarily best it. You just got to be different.
Yeah.
You want it to be at least as good, in some ways, but every album is its own album, and every song is its own song. So you can't really say that either.
Right.
That's like saying, well, what do you like better, your boy or your girl? I like them all. They're all my kids.
Right. Well, what's your guys' writing process like when you are putting this stuff together? Is it separately and bring it together, or do you get together in the same room, or how do you?
Usually me and Robbie will get together in the same room, or me and the other guys, and Robbie will just sit there, and if someone have an idea, we'll throw it out. Or more often than not, somebody will come up with a riff, and I'll take that and I'll put a melody to it, and then start scratching some lyrics out. Or I'll come up with a melody, and we'll get that going and find out where it sounds good, and then put some music to it. There's a lot of different ways a song can arrive into the world. Um, uh, I just like them to happen by themselves, a natural way, natural childbirth.
Yeah, right. When you're coming up with a song, are you a guy that it's always music and then you write lyrics after you have the music, or are you always writing lyrics?
No, it's different ways. I always thought it used to be that. It used to be like always music first. Whatever, I mean, you start penning the lyrics, but usually it was music, melody, lyrics, and now it's whatever comes first. I've learned to work between the worlds. I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be one way or another, or not.
absolutely.
And I used to swear it was easier to write this way, and I just realized whatever way it comes out is the way it's going to come out. Just don't force it.
All right, man. Well, I absolutely appreciate you taking the time with me today. I love the Russell Guns album, all the stuff you've done with Jack Russell's Great White, and I look forward to seeing you down the line. Hope to see you live again soon.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it, Trent. Have a great day, brother.
There you go, Jack Russell of Jack Russell's Great White. A huge thank you to David from Freeman Promotions for his help in setting that one up. And of course, a massive thank you to Jack Russell for taking some time there to hit me up on Zoom and talk about everything he's got going on with Jack Russell's Great White, Russell Guns, and lots of other stuff in between. This one was pretty big for me, quite an honor. Like I said at the beginning, this has been a long, one of the people on the list that I wanted to get on this podcast since Jason and I started it nearly 9 years ago. So very happy to finally make this one happen. If you're a huge Great White fan, like I mentioned earlier, Mark Kendall was on here a couple different times. And of course, Terry Ailou was on here about a year ago talking about his time with Great White as well. And now we've got the man, the voice, Great White himself, Jack Russell, on this podcast. Like I said, in there more than once now, if you haven't ever listened to Psycho City, do it today. If you haven't listened to Sail Away, do it today. 2 albums that came out back to back but are wildly different in style. One of the things I always loved about Great White, always loved that they set themselves apart from that entire era of music, even though they're, lumped into the glam rock 80s hair metal genres or whatever because of the time they came out. And you could fit some of the songs into that area. They had big ballads, but they also were very much a blues-based rock band that didn't have, the same tendencies as a Poison, Def Leppard, Warrant, that kind of vein. They kind of carved their own path in a world of rock where music like that wasn't in the mainstream. And, they did it repeatedly, album after album, mixing blues, hard rock, through his vocals, through the guitars, through the piano, everything. Such a phenomenal band that, if you're listening, you're just a casual listener and you're just familiar with some of the hits like Once Bitten, Twice Shy or Save Your Love, House of Broken Love, and so on. Just delve into it. They're one of the bands, you can go on to a Spotify playlist or something and just hit shuffle and just listen to all the different stuff from throughout the years. Desert Moon, Call It Rock and Roll from the Hooked album. Those were great tracks as well. Just absolutely looking forward to what Jack talked about there with the possibility of an acoustic version of the album Twice Shy coming out. Hopefully they do that. And of course, hopefully we get another studio album from Jack Russell's Great White like we got with He Saw It Coming a few years ago. So again, I could keep going on rambling and gushing about it, but dive into this stuff. Like I said, especially Russell Guns. It's the newest thing you can hear from Jack Russell. And of course, you've got the chance to see him and his band live throughout the rest of this year and in the coming years to come. So once again, if this is your first time listening, we've got a great episode coming up next with Jeff Pilson, who is, of course, one of the original members of Dokken. They've been in the press quite a bit because Don Dokken kind of ran his mouth about how he had, more to do with the writing than anybody else. And of course, Jeff Pilson stepped in and said, whoa, that's not entirely true. We didn't really get into that in our podcast because that's already been out in the press. But, when I talked to him, we of course talked about Dokken, what he's been doing, as the band leader of Foreigner for the past 20 years, what he's been doing with the End Machine with George Lynch. The guy's a great producer. He's worked with Last in Line. Such a cool one that hits a lot of subjects, so look forward to that one. Last week, Gus G was on here, the phenom guitarist that is a former member, of course, of Ozzy's band. He also has the amazing power metal band Firewind. Great one to check out. A few weeks ago, we had on Brian Tatler of Diamond Head fame, who is also now a member of Saxon. Late last year, Blake Bedsall from Saul was on here. But jumping into what you might love as a Great White fan and era of that music, we've had on members of Kiss, Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Whitesnake, Winger, Warrant, Tesla, Twisted Sister, Queensryche, Tyketto, Firehouse, Slaughter, LA Guns, Junkyard, Kicks. I know there's stuff I'm forgetting, but we also branch all over the worlds of metal. Whether it gets super heavy with stuff like Testament or the Black Dahlia Murder. I've had on members of Megadeth, Shinedown. Vanilla Ice has been on this podcast. So see there, we're just all over the place. So jump into all the past stuff, thethunderunderground.com. You can listen directly there. You can listen most places podcasts are heard. Wherever you're listening, if you hit like or subscribe or follow so you don't miss future episodes. And anytime you see a post or anything, if you like it, share it, comment, whatever you can do. That's just an easy, free way to help out this podcast. I'm officially, for the first time in years, out of t-shirts for Thunder Underground. And that's something I'm going to be working on this month in March. So I'll be, of course, posting about that when they're available again. But there's always koozies, shot glasses, guitar picks, stickers, and that kind of stuff available. Hit me up if you want something sent to you, or if you're in the Tulsa area and you see me out and about, let me know that way as well. All right, once again, we've got Jeff Pilson coming up. I also just recorded an interview with the keyboardist and producer of the band Myrath. I've heard it pronounced both Myrath and Mirath. I think it might just depend on the language you're pronouncing it in, but they're from Tunisia. And they're a progressive metal band that also has some power metal tendencies, some Middle Eastern tendencies, lots of orchestration parts in their music. Phenomenal freaking metal band. So we're going to be talking to him soon. And I've also got a couple scheduled next week with a couple big name artists, and one of them being a legendary artist from this same genre that we just talked about with Jack Russell and Mr. Big and all the 80s stuff. So really looking forward to that and letting you know what that is next time we talk. All right, I'm going to stop rambling. Hit us up on all the socials. Follow wherever you see it. Once again, a huge thank you to Sunset Tattoo, DEB Concerts, Freeman Promotions, and Jack Russell. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.